Videos going over rewrites of Adam's character are a dime a dozen these days, and on top of that I've certainly missed the optimum time of hype by making this video months after Adam's death. However, being current has never really been this channel's MO. I haven't watched any of the How to Do Adam Better videos available, mostly because the main conceit of them seems to be, I wanted Adam to be intimidating and threatening, and that sounds boring to me. That being said, I understand why the community seems to have a fascination with fixing Adam. Volume 6's finale had a couple of issues, but the one that seems to have clung to our minds is Adam's digressed characterization. What was once a mentor to Blake became an abusive ex, and finally, a whiny incel who spouts insults like it's his Pokemon cry. Adam seems to have lost all of the intrigue of his character along with his mask, and the way RT fumbles his motivations in his final volume left me feeling like there could have been more to our beast. So I've put together a version of RWBY that helps facilitate Adam's character a bit better. Something important to note here is that I've gone about this by trying to change as little as possible from the canon. I'm not out here trying to make a whole alternate universe fanfiction, which also means that if I don't mention something in this video, just assume I'd keep it the same. And with all that out of the way, let's begin. In this version of the story, the abusive angle is going to be dropped completely, as we'll be going with what seems to be Monty's original plan for Adam. You don't doodle your abuser that scares you into a frenzy in your notebook. And the abuse element of Blake's character is one of the worst ones handled in the show, so we're going to be putting that one on the shelf. We don't get any changes to our version of the story until Volume 2. The trailers in Volume 1 would be totally the same as they are in canon. We still have Blake drawing Adam in her book, we still get her talking about him in passing at Mountain Glen. And then episode 11 happens. RWBY stays on the top of the train with Oobleck and the others jump down into the cars. Yang gets stopped by Neo while Blake and Weiss continue forward. This is where our first big change happens. The next person the girls encounter would be Torchwick. Blake stays behind to face him since she's the one who's got beef with Roman, and Weiss proceeds forward, where she then finds Adam. This puts Adam into our plot directly, meaning he's more than just an out-of-nowhere threat to show up as the school falls apart later. Bringing Adam into this scene also gives him much more weight. Weiss doesn't know who he is. She should have just as much of a reaction to him as she does with the lieutenant with the chainsaw. But we know who he is. We recognize his threat level of ex-boyfriend and know what he's capable of because of the Black trailer. By simply changing the no-name lieutenant to Adam, the whole scene has more tension to it. You don't even have to change their interactions.
Finally, I get to kill a Schnee.
And this would be the perfect time to incorporate him into the show, as this volume is not only White Fang heavy, but Blake's also been dropping hints of him throughout it. The fights then proceed in the same way, with Yang and Weiss getting stomped by their opponents, except now Blake gets to see Adam walk into a train car after Weiss, and this would give them a moment of hesitation. Blake's working with the Schnee, Adam's working with Torchwick. Blake then runs away, like she always does, and Adam lets her go. The show then continues as normal after that, including Adam appearing with Cinder and company at the end, allowing us to see he made it out of the crash alive and giving his team up with her more weight, as we've now gotten some time with this character. Volume 3 is then the same until the attack on Beacon. Everything's falling apart and Adam shows up. Blake then finds him as he's about to hurt some human. I think it'd be nice if it was someone we recognize, and she jumps in to stop him. The two then have a small dialogue that goes something like, I don't want to fight you, but I will if I have to. Not all humans are bad people. I've seen what they do to us. Your family kept you safe, but I wasn't so lucky. This small interaction tells us both characters' stances on humans and also alludes to Blake's royal-ish family. This conversation should have Adam feeling desperate. He really doesn't want to hurt Blake here. Remember, we're not having him be an abuser. But he truly does feel what he's doing is the only way to help Thanos. They tussle, Blake loses, and Adam says something like, I'm just trying to do what's best for us, and goes to try and stab his original human victim. This is when Yang shows up. She sees Blake on the floor and a White Fang member attacking a human, and jumps in to try to help. This is the culmination of Blake's secret keeping. By electing to keep her past as hidden as possible from her friends, Yang isn't able to recognize the threat in Adam. Blake could have warned her team about her ex and his super strong moves and impressive semblance, but she didn't, and so Yang loses her arm. Blake thinks it's her fault. Blake could let out a scream or something, catching Adam off guard and allowing her the chance to grab Yang and run, or she could simply collect her friend and flee without engaging Adam anymore. Either way, the two escape. Importantly, we don't get the decapitation fake-out. Adam still doesn't want to hurt Blake, so there's no reason for him to try and kill her like that. Volume 4 would be exactly the same, but if we're fixing things, then we might as well cut out Blake hitting Sun. It only makes Blake's conceited attitude of the volume become outright hateable, and without the shitty excuse of abuse victims get a pass on hurting their friends available for this rewrite, there's no reason for it to happen at all. Anyway, Blake's character short would now be about her relationship with Adam, and we get to see her gradually disagree with his actions as they drift apart, leading up to the Black trailer. Ilya's story about her parents' death would be moved into the actual volume somehow. Ilya's arc becomes an antithesis parallel to Adam's. Ilya is an example of helping the person stop their destructive ways before it becomes too late. Adam still kills Sienna, but it wouldn't just be a lame power grab. He'd believe that Sienna's holding the organization back but not being aggressive enough with their message. Preferably would also include a cool fight scene, add in Sienna saying something like, "I'd sooner die than let you take over," and Adam seeming remorseful, maybe even apologizing to her for her death, and it's a perfect scene. Adam would still join Hazel in attacking Haven and would still brawl with Blake and Sun, except the scene wouldn't include all of Blake's "I'm over you" stingers. She's standing her ground this time, but it's still sad that they can't work this out peacefully. Here's the big upset. I'd have Adam's mask break here, letting us see his scar during the Volume 5 finale. He and Blake get to look each other in the eye, allowing us to see remorse on his face, before he flees the losing battle. Blake stops Sun from giving chase with the flimsy excuse of "it'd be too dangerous," and would still give her line of, "and now he can see what it's like to run away." But rather than it being a moment of comeuppance, it would be played as Blake trying to hide the fact that she still doesn't want to fight her old mentor and boyfriend, and feels bad for him. The volume then concludes as normal. Adam's character short would be totally different. Rather than being a handful of disconnected and emotionless fight scenes, it would instead be the story of how Adam got his scar. I don't know how exactly it happened, but whatever art he decided it was would be put on display here. The reason it'd be a character short is because it's ultimately supplemental material. We don't need to know the specifics of how Adam got his scar to be able to enjoy the core story being told in the show, but getting to see how exactly it went down is a fun bonus for any fans who'd like to know more about the characters. Throughout Volume 6, Yang would continually have small hallucinations of Adam, including replacing Blake catching a glimpse of him on the train. This would lead up to her and Blake, and maybe also the rest of the team, depending on if RT wanted to lean in on the Bumblebee romance continuing to build in the scene or not, talking about him and Blake's old feelings for him. This is also where Blake would explain his semblance. When Oscar runs away at Argus, we'd cut away from the search parties to spend some time with him. In a perfect world, we'd get to see Oscar develop on-screen as he comes to terms with being just another one of Ozma's lives, but we're not here to focus on Oscar. However, I would have Oscar bump into Adam during his wandering around town. The scene should be tense, as Oscar is oblivious to the potential danger he's in as Adam questions him a bit, gathering intel on where Blake and her friends are. The audience should be concerned that Adam may attack Oscar at some point during their talk, but he would ultimately leave Oscar unharmed as he vanishes into the city's alleyways. Blake would then encounter Adam at the CCT tower. As he murders the tower staff and rants about equality and retribution, Blake would jump in to help. She would prioritize getting Adam to chase her as a way to save the remaining CCT employees. This would eventually lead them to the clearing by the waterfall. Blake would then have a line like, "Adam, you've gone too far! You're as bad as the people who hurt you!" Now that they both know that their friendship can never be recovered and that their ideals and morals are far too different, they fight without holding back. This is where the decapitation fake-out would happen. They had tried to pull it off again, with Adam going to stab Blake but just getting her shadow. It had felt like a hollow grab at rekindling the fear the original attack back at Beacon had successfully instilled in the audience. But in our new version, the effect of the scene isn't just being repeated, and is rather just moved to a thematically appropriate moment in the story. With the failed decapitation, Yang then appears to help, just like in the canon show. Through dialogue and animation, it becomes clear Adam is upset Blake would rather side with a human over him, but now without all the incel one-liners. The group then fights. Through the events of the brawl, Adam still ends up dying, but now it's more clearly in self-defense. Depleted of aura after Yang's punch, Adam lunges to attack Blake, who extends her weapon and stabs him through the chest. In this version, Yang isn't involved in the stabbing, so as to not muddy the morality of was it self-defense or not. We see regret in Adam's eyes as he dies and falls off the cliff. Blake cries, having just killed her old friend / significant other, and Yang comforts her. This version wouldn't have Blake say things like, "I'm not gonna leave you," or "I'm not lying" to Yang here. Not only would Adam not accuse her of such things, but Blake is also genuinely sad it ended this way. Importantly, the girls don't touch foreheads or hold each other's faces here. The point of the scene is to take a moment to let the remorse and loss sink in before getting back to the main plot elsewhere. We shouldn't be developing the budding relationship between the girls right after the murder of one of their exes. Save the romantic development for later when it's more appropriate. And there we have it. A main element of this rewrite would be to make the White Fang a more sympathetic adversary. As they currently are in the show, the White Fang are just another group of goons for the girls to plow through, mechanically identical to hordes of Grimm. But by making a main player of the gang an understandable villain, it helps to give the White Fang weight to their actions. This would also help with Blake's character. We've been told she runs away all the time, but never really get to see that in the show aside from one instance. But by incorporating Adam into the story, we get to see how Blake develops around him. She starts by running away, but as she grows, she stands her ground with more confidence each time she encounters him, ultimately getting Adam to come after her willingly to save others from danger, the literal antithesis of running from a battle. This would also help with Adam's character, which is nebulously messy in the canon version of the show. He hops between still being Blake's crush to cartoonishly abusive to an unthreatening teen complaining about everything. The flippy-floppy nature of his writing makes it impossible to take Adam seriously as a threat, and transforms his inclusion into an unnecessary distraction from the main plot. By keeping him consistent and weaving Blake's other friends into his scenes as well, it grounds Adam into the story. No longer just Blake's specific enemy, but rather an element for the whole group to care about to some degree. But, I don't know, that's just how I would have done it. If you think the show did it better, or like someone else's rewrite more, that's okay. I'm not trying to convince you I'm a master over here, or that you should consider my version the new canon. This is all just a fun thought experiment, trying my best to keep Adam's characterization from descending into shadows.